This episode of I'm Reviewing Here is sponsored by Vaseline because it's really helpful. And if you just get Vaseline anywhere and say my name, then you'll get it for free. So do it right now. Go. Skedaddle.
Hey! I'm reviewing here!
Hola, ¿cómo estás? I'm speaking Spanish because I'm going to be reviewing a Spanish movie today, and this is how this works. I'm clever, huh? I am so clever. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I'm Reviewing Here. I'm also obnoxious. This is a podcast where I, Matthew Bussey, am watching and reviewing Sight and Sound's top greatest movies of all time. I don't really go by Matthew, but I just think it's kind of a proper name, and it makes me sound very British, which I like, because I am half British, and a lot of people don't know that about me. And you know what really bothers me is whenever Americans try to do a British accent, but they just only do it in like the poised proper way. I think that's BS. Speak like Scary Spice does in Spice World. That's not really British. That's Northern? I think it's Northern. Yeah. Does anybody know how to deliver a baby? Yeah. When I say go, we go. It's like that. It's like, Oh, it's so good. Spice World is amazing. This is no surprise, but I saw Spice World in theaters in 1998, I think was the year it came out, or was it 97? I can't remember. And I'm also still just so fascinated how when they step inside the bus looks 15 to 55 to 100 times bigger inside than on the outside. Yeah. And those aliens do still creep me out. Okay. There are no aliens in today's movie, though. Today's movie is a very perplexing but really riveting film that I had never heard of, and I really hope you haven't heard of it either. And I hope that this episode inspires you to go and watch it and also learn a little bit about Cuban history, because I don't really know a lot about Cuban history, and I thought that I did, but I did not pay attention in school. So, shit. The movie today is called Memories of that's bad. The movie today is called Memories of Underdevelopment. I was going to enunciate every word, but that's really stupid. Okay, here you go. Take a listen.
Y de todos será la victoria.
Ya la gente despiadada, al ver que ella dobla el lomo de un aguijonazo rudo, le gritan adiós. Está rudo quien te manda a hacer buey.
Yeah, Memories of Underdevelopment. Wow. Also known as Memorias del Subdesarrollo. Oh, but I can't roll my R's. Let me try. Hold on. Yeah, good. I'm crushing it. Yeah, that was stupid. Why the hell did I do that? Now I'm coughing. Okay, 1968 movie. It is in black and white. It is a docudrama, which means it's a mix of documentary footage and scripted narrative footage involving actors, because actors play people. They do occasionally play people that are real, but actors, for those of you who don't know, they say lines that aren't true. I'm just being an asshole. I'm sorry. I'm totally kidding right now. You know that, of course. Yeah, it's a docudrama. I don't even know if I've actually reviewed a docudrama on this podcast yet. Have I? I don't remember. This is what, episode like 97 million? It feels like a lot. It feels like more than that. But yeah, a very riveting, like I said, a very riveting film. This is based on a novel called Inconsolable, sorry, that was my dog, Inconsolable Memories. Inconsolable Memories. I actually thought that was in Spanish because I cannot read goddamn English. Inconsolable Memories, which came out in 1965 by this author named Edmundo Desnoes, who, surprise, was Cuban. Yeah, there's a lot of Cuban here. This is a Cuban-themed episode. This film was directed by a man named Tomas Gutierrez Alia, I think is how you say his last name. Co-written by him and Edmundo Desnoes as well. He adapted it with Alia. Alia was a contributing director to the new Latin American cinema. I know there's a lot of new and then a name of a territory or a country, and boom, it exists. Honestly, Google anything. New Icelandic cinema probably exists. New Madagascar cinema. Is it Madagascar or Madagascar? I never know if I'm saying it right. New Sri Lankan cinema. Guys, there is a film movement in every part, every corner, every crevice, every hole of this planet. There is a planet. No, there is a movement. That's what I'm trying to say. I started thinking about aliens and planets and I got excited. So, no. Yeah. Now, what makes a new Latin American cinema like quite possibly every other film movement? It's a movie that is not like all the other movies. Well, what does that mean? It doesn't really have a full story. It plays around with its camera a lot. Plays around with, kind of defying the rules and the standards of how you're supposed to make a movie, meaning you got to make a movie predictable and you got to have a story in a movie. It has to get all the studio approval, blah, 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 blah. There's so much more independence in these types of films. And that's what I love. That's what I really loved about Memories of Underdevelopment. It is a film that really combines a lot of genres. It's a film that it really just glues you to the screen. You see, I think the reason this was hard for me to interpret is that I don't totally know Cuban history that much. It's a movie that takes place from the Cuban Revolution to the missile crisis. And the Cuban Revolution, what was that? Okay. I've kind of been practicing this. So the Cuban Revolution, it happened between 1953 and 1959. It was basically when everybody tried to overthrow the Cuban government, and they eventually overthrew I believe he was a dictator, Fulgencio Batista. Yes. Yes. Hold on. Yeah, he was a dictator. Yes. So they overthrew him. Fidel Castro took over. They did make Cuba like a communist place, and that caused a lot of trouble with the United States because the U.S. back in the day was like, commies, no, So they freaked out. That led to the Bay of Pigs. Bay of Pigs, I never knew what the hell that was, and I always thought it was just a pay that consisted of pigs, and I always used to write that in my history papers all the time. The same time, they asked me what a Silk Road was, and I wrote, it's a road made of silk. I did not know. I did not listen, but that was a big failure. We all know that is the one thing I remember about the Bay of Pigs invasion. So Alia, in this film, he shows you a lot of real footage, real interviews with people that were on trial, people who, were fighting in this revolution. There are some really disturbing images of deceased people who died, in battle. And there's a lot of information presented to you. I think this is a movie where it's okay if you don't know, you obviously don't need to know every single fact of the Cuban Revolution. Now, obviously, if you are a big Cuban head, then you'll know everything possible in this film. But, the history of Cuba, though, it plays a huge part in this film. And I say this a lot. It's like, can you guess it? A character in itself. You know how settings are like characters? In this case, it's a time period. That's a character in itself. And the whole movie, it's a cross-cutting of footage, and then there is the story that takes place. But it's less of a story, it's more of a character study around this lead character in the film named Sergio, that's how you pronounce it. The G is silent. No, it's not silent. It is silent. It's like an H. Sergio, yeah. Sergio Carmona Mendoyo. So let me get to it. I thought I had something better to say, but it lost my mind. All right, here we go.
Plot synopsis.
I looked everywhere for a really good, detailed synopsis of this film, and I cannot find it. I spent hours. I was sweating. No, I was not sweating. I couldn't really find it. So this is from your most your most trusted source, Wikipedia, and I was too lazy to write, a real full description of this film because I don't get paid for this. It's just a hobby. Leave me alone. So here we go. I'm going to read this. It is quicker, but I'm also going to, go over it a little bit. So Sergio, he is played by an actor whose name was also Sergio Corriere. He's a wealthy bourgeois aspiring writer who decides to stay in Cuba even though his wife and friends flee to Miami. So this is a big part in the film. Everybody is fleeing in this film. Many people have already fled the country, after, this revolution. So during the revolution, excuse me. So it's pretty bad. It's kind of there's a little bit of madness going on. Everybody is fleeing. And you hear about this a lot. The chick I shouldn't say chick. I'm sorry. Some people find that offensive. I'm trying to sound hippie. I'm trying to fit in. The woman on The View, Anna Navarro, I think is her name. I think she fled communism, but I may be wrong there. I don't watch The View. That show gives me a headache. I can't listen to... Well, no, I just can't listen. I can't watch it. Sergio looks back over the changes in Cuba from the Cuban Revolution to the missile crisis, the effect of living in what he calls, quote, an underdeveloped country, and his relations with his girlfriends, Elena and Hannah. Okay, who is Elena? Oh boy, this is going to get a little bit awkward. Elena is a very young woman. I did not know she was young in this film. She looked really mature for her age. I could not find... no, I did find... What am I talking about? She was like in her 20s, this actress. Her name was Daisy Granados when she filmed this movie. She's supposed to be 16. They say 16, and then in the shot right after, they say 17. I think that was actually a film error that I caught. Or I don't know, maybe she just turned 17. I don't freaking know. She's supposed to be 16. Who is she in this movie? She is a teenager that Sergio picks up on the street. She's an aspiring actress. They kind of form this relationship, but it's not good at all. There's a really awkward, really intense moment where, Sergio doesn't really come off as a really aggressive guy, but he brings her back to his apartment and she's being flirty, and then he kind of just changes and he starts to chase her, and she is smiling and giggling still. So it's is she into this or is she not into this? And then they start kissing, and then it cuts to after they've had sex, and she's like, my parents are never going to forgive me. I'm never going to forgive myself for this. And you find out later, which I'll get to, she's very devoutly religious, and she's not married to this guy, and she just had sex with him, which is, not good. Not good. Sergio also is he's a very unusual character because, hold on. Sorry, I got to squeak. Hold on. Ow. He is very, very cynical. There's a shot in this movie early on where he just doesn't like where he is. He feels like he can't leave the place, and he feels like everybody in Cuba is an idiot. And he's just cynical. There's no other word for it. There's a shot. I'm sorry, I got distracted. There's a shot where he's on his balcony and he goes into his bird cage, and one of the parrots is dead, and he just picks up the parrot, the dead parrot, drops it off his balcony, and just says, it's time to leave. He says that in voiceover. There's a lot of voiceover. I forgot to say that. There's a ton of voiceover. Sergio narrates this entire film. And, there's just other moments. He listens to this recording of him arguing with his wife, and it's really vicious and awful, and they're yelling at each other. And as he's listening to it, he puts his wife's pantyhose over his face and, smushes his face and, looks at himself in the mirror. And you're just watching it going, what is going on here? What is this guy? He's a mess. He's also a very, very, I feel like he objectifies women a lot. He is a very horny guy. He talks about how he's attracted to his housekeeper, and then there's a shot where she tells him about when she was baptized, and then we see this imaginary sequence of him baptizing her, and then we see these other shots that seem to imply that these are fantasies of him. They're in his head. He is imagining, getting naked with her and doing a little naughty time. Yeah. I'm sorry. I have to laugh sometimes. Yeah, so naughty. Naughty is just a funny word to say. And he objectifies women. He's pretty misogynistic. You know, he says in one scene, "Women are fruit that go rotten so fast." I mean, whew. And, you know, we learned a little bit about his backstory. We learned that he's been going to, as a child, he started going to whorehouses in the city when he was 13. Like, you know, I think it's like with his dad or something. So it's messed up. It is messed up. And, you know, he doesn't have good things to say about Elena. Elena does not really, she seems to like being with him, but she's also a child and she doesn't know what she wants. You know, she's not fully developed yet. But Sergio treats her basically as being an idiot, you know, and he says she's so annoying because she doesn't, I think this is like a direct quote, she doesn't establish links between, no, that's not a direct quote, I remember when I wrote this, she doesn't establish links between her feelings and emotions. And it's frustrating to watch because it's like, dude, she's 16. What are you talking? You know, get someone your own age. He's supposed to be 38 in this movie, too. I forgot if I said that, but yeah. Oh, boy. Okay. So what is Memories of Underdevelopment about? It's overall a complex character study of alienation during the turmoil of social changes. The film is told in a highly subjective point of view through a fragmented narrative that resembles the way memories function. Very true. All the shots, everything is connected, and the way it's presented is like memories. You know, it's like, you know, like when you think of a memory, you don't think about why you're thinking about it. It just pops in your head, just that specific memory. That's what this movie does. It's very, very genius. Throughout the film, so like I said, Sergio narrates the action and at times is used as a tool to present bits of political information about the climate in Cuba at the time. In several instances, like I said, there is real-life documentary footage of protests and political events, and it's incorporated into the film and played over Sergio's narration to expose the audience to the reality of the revolution. The time frame of the film is somewhat ambiguous, but it appears to take place over a few months. So what happens in the story? Well, like I said, you know, the biggest focus in the story is between Sergio and Elena. He totally ghosts Elena. They go to Ernest Hemingway's house, and this was filmed in the real house. It's called Finca Vigía, and it was his home. And it's still there, too. I think you can still visit it. She's there and she's outside and she's calling for him and he just stays in the house and doesn't, you know, doesn't say, "Come up, sweetie, honey," whatever. He just, you know, leaves her there and she just leaves. And then near the very end of the movie, it totally goes nuts. Her family, accuse him of raping her. And then they go to trial and he's declared innocent. And then the movie just ends. So, I mean, at this point, I'm just going to say the end. The end.
Oye, ¿quieres comer conmigo?
¿Está loco?
No, de veras, es que no me gusta comer solo. ¿Qué haces por aquí? ¿Estás esperando a alguien? ¿Tu novio?
¿Está loco?
A tu edad es muy peligroso andar sola por estos lugares.
Está loco.
No, mira, de veras, es que... ¿Por qué no vienes conmigo? Te lo juro, no hago buenas digestiones cuando como solo.
Es que estoy esperando a un señor del ICAI que me citó para un trabajo.
¿El ICAI?
Sí, eso del cine. Me van a hacer una prueba.
Ah, sí. Yo tengo un amigo allí bastante importante, es director.
¿En el ICAI?
Sí. Si quieres, mañana mismo voy y te lo presento.
¿Qué hora será?
Como las 6:30.
Ya es tarde, seguro que ya no viene.
Bueno, ¿vienes?
So what does it all mean? What does it all mean? I think before I get into that, because again, I'm still a little bit perplexed by this film. I get what it's trying to say. What it's trying to say is that when there is a lot of social change happening in your town, in your country, when there's a lot of political strife and a lot of angry people and a lot of diatribe and it's crazy, it really affects how you feel. It's like we know that, we all know that, but I think Memories of Underdevelopment is a very clear, concise analysis of of why it affects us, and how I think it's also really well done because it is an example of how so many of us, we don't like our countries. We don't like our leaders, I mean, we can disagree with our leaders, or we cannot feel safe, or we can just hate and be everybody and just become so vehemently, pessimistic about everything. So why don't we just leave? Why don't we just leave? Obviously, it's not that simple. You can't just pack up a bag and leave. But, this movie is a really clear example of how, A, it's not that simple to just leave, and B, we can't really grasp how much political turmoil and all that can really impact us negatively, Now, saying that, I felt really clever when I said that, but I sound stupid. But saying that, that leads us that leads you, the viewer, to really kind of think, well, this Sergio guy, is he a good guy? Is he a villain? He's gross. He's gross. Now, look, this came out in the 60s. People were sleeping with a lot younger people back then. It's disgusting how it was, so common and was considered okay, literally until like the 2000s. Like, I kid you not. Not even the 2000s. The 2010s is when people were like, okay, that's kind of weird. Maybe don't do that in movies and in real life. But, especially in real life and in movies, don't do that. Is he a good guy or is he a bad guy? I don't think he's a bad guy in this film. I don't think he's a predator, really. I know that can be very misinterpreted if you watch this movie in 2024. Obviously, we all know that. But I think that he's just kind of a pathetic guy, This is like a very, there's kind of like a Greek, almost Greek tragedy feel to this, like all these old stories we read. Not even Greek, that's not the right word. What am I thinking of? Shakespearean. There's kind of something very tragic and Shakespearean about Sergio as a character because he's pathetic. He's so unhappy and miserable, but you kind of are so immersed in his life, and you don't care about him, but you just want to see what happens next. He's good. He's a good actor. That actor, Sergio Corriere. He's that's when an actor has real charisma, when they can play someone who's maybe not the most sympathetic, but you're still really curious about them and interested in them. So I mean, what do I really take away from this movie? It's kind of like I said. It's that politics, living in a country where politics, everything is just so precarious and everything is just so, stressful. It really does mess with you psychologically. I feel like the moral of this movie is when you live in a country that has a lot of political issues or whatever, say what you will, it turns you into a really mean-spirited person. It does. It makes you say things that maybe deep down in your mind you don't believe, but you're just so lost in this never-ending mess of an existence that, you do kind of lose your mind. Look, I lived in America from 2016 to 2020. Well, I still live here. I lived here from 2016 to 2020. I'm not going to mention the former president's name, but, it was crazy. It was crazy. Did I lose my mind? Absolutely. Was I as bad as Sergio? No, I wasn't. But, yeah. It's like we lose our minds. This is an example of what happens. So, very good. Now, look, I didn't really talk a lot about the Cuban stuff because, again, I watched this twice because I really, the second time, tried to learn every single thing about the Cuban Revolution. But I don't even know if Alia, the director, is really, trying to make this a didactic kind of essay film. It's not really like that. The history plays a big part in this film. There's a lot of it. I can see, maybe not. I was going to say I could see like high school teachers showing this movie, but maybe not because there's a few boobies in it. But, the history sequences, absolutely. Yeah. It's good. It's good. I love watching a good old historical film every now and again. You obviously have to be in the right mindset, but when you are, it is very entertaining. BTS Secrets and Scandals! So, here we go. So, what did the author Edmundo Desnoes think about Sergio? Was he meant to be unsympathetic? He said that him being unsympathetic is the tragedy of Sergio. His irony, his intelligence is a defense mechanism which prevents him from being involved in the reality. Yeah, defense mechanism is kind of the one thing. I think like when you're living in a country where you're constantly seeing everybody say, this government is awful, this place is awful, we have to overthrow everything. I feel like your mind, your immediate instinct, your immediate reaction is to just be negative, So again, I don't know if he is a bad guy in this film. Now, this movie was very different from the film, and Aaliyah and Corey, oh my God, why can't I say his name? Corriere, who plays Sergio, the actor, they both stated that they actually liked the adaptation more than the film. And Aaliyah explained in an interview with Cineasta in 1977 that at a certain point the novel, quote, was to be betrayed, negated, and transformed into something else for it to be successful as a film. Now, does that always work out? Are the authors usually okay with that? Well, in this case, he was. Desnoes was fully conscious of the fact that his book would be changed as it was made into a movie, and therefore he was able to keep a positive attitude. He's a good guy. He ended up attending shooting sessions and made valuable suggestions. He supported the changes to the screen. Haven't read the book, but I can guarantee you that this is a very experimental film. Now, experimental, don't get scared when I say that. It's not like what's going on here. It's not a confusing movie that is like artsy and everything like that, because I know sometimes people don't like that. Sometimes I don't like that in movies. No, it's experimental in that Aaliyah is really playing with that camera, playing with the editing, playing with characters talking off screen and making it seem like they're right behind the camera, playing with characters looking right at the camera when they're playing with characters looking at the camera. Did I say cameras or character? I'm sorry. Playing with characters looking at the camera when they say their lines, It's a wild movie. It is a very wild movie. Sergio Corriere's hair was dyed gray to portray a 38-year-old since he was 28 years old at the time of filming. Didn't even notice. Aaliyah was heavily influenced in his style by Alain René's Hiroshima Mon Amour. Yeah, I can see that. I like this movie a lot better, though. This was the first film to be made in post-revolutionary Cuba to be released in the United States. Even further, when the U.S. National Society of Film Critics awarded the film a special prize in 1973, this is sad, Aaliyah was denied a visitor's visa to attend the ceremony because of the political turmoil between the U.S. and Cuba at the time. They basically said, we have issues with Cuba because you may be communists and you can't come here, sorry. What the hell? Hannah, the character who plays Sergio's long-lost love in the film, was intended to be a much larger character, but the actress that ended up being cast was not a professional, so the character's role was reduced. Now, I kind of like that in this film. I like that there's a little bit of mystique in that character. It kind of adds to the surrealness of, Sergio talking about his past and his life and his attitude and his dreams and everything. I like it. I kind of like that. People may disagree, but I like how Elena is really the only... I like how Elena and Sergio are really the only characters in this film. Like, there are a few other characters that have a few lines, but they're very adjunct, in my opinion. The best moment! No real favorite moment. I think just in general, the editing of the movie I loved. I love the editing of the film. Every shot, all the cross-cutting and the fade. Are there fade-ins in this movie? I didn't take note of that, but... yeah, cinematography, man, that was my favorite part of this film. I mean, the sex scene between Elena, why do I keep saying, is it Elena? Yeah, it is Elena. Elena, banana, fanana, Elena, Elena, banana, fana, fofulena. Okay. The sex scene between them is very uncomfortable, and it definitely was the first scene that made me go, oh, wow. It definitely gave me a bad reaction, but no, I didn't like that scene. It was creepy.
Mais est-ce que je suis d'accord avec les critiques de ce film?
Did not find a ton of reviews for this film, but I'll read a few. Vincent Canby of the New York Times said, "Here is a film about alienation that is wise, sad, and often funny, and that never slips into the bored and boring attitudes that wreck Antonioni's later films." Yes, I agree. Look, I have stated by now twice, I think, how I feel about Michelangelo Antonioni. Not a fan of his films. I've tried, but I just can't get into them. This is a much better film about alienation because it's not boring. Just plain and simple, it's not boring. Now, Antonioni, he is a very different director than this guy, but this one was just better. You can make a movie about alienation, but make it riveting, at the same time. And this is exactly what the director Aliyah does. So John DeFore from The Hollywood Reporter said, Aliyah blends, I really hope I'm saying his name right, because I keep thinking of Aliyah, like when people make Aliyah to Israel, when they immigrate to Israel. And if I'm not saying it right, then... oh boy. Director A blends documentary and feature devices, steals street scenes that put fictional characters in real situations, and offers new wave influence insights into a man who resents what's around him but can't bring himself to leave it. Definitely a lot of French new wavy things in this film. Hell yeah. And that just is really what the movie's about. A man who resents what's around him but can't bring himself to leave it. He's pathetic. He really is just a bit of a pathetic guy. Bilga, I think, of The Village Voice said, alternating between immediacy and reflection, fantasy and honesty, lyricism and horror, Memories of Underdevelopment feels like it's being created before our very eyes. Yes, I like that. This feels like a new movie. Like, it feels very new and fresh. There's something about it that... yeah, it does not feel dated at all. It really, really doesn't. Penelope Gilliatt of New Yorker said, the film has the lightness of a bird coasting and a humorous gravity that makes it a piece of work without burden, extending much charity to the stoic heroes hidden. I don't know what that is. I just thought the lightness of a bird coasting was a nice image to visualize.
Is it really one of the best movies of all time?
You know what? I'm going to say yes. Look, this movie blew me away with its fast-pacedness, with its themes, with its very poetic kind of philosophical, story. It's like it's an essay film, but it's not. It's like a French New Wave film, but it's Cuban. It's a lot of things, and I thought it was excellently well done, even though I can't fully comprehend and interpret it because I'm not an expert at Cuban history. I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, this is one of the best movies. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. It's like I just said, it just feels new. It has that really fresh quality to it that, it's that, I review movies where sometimes I go, well, this is great, but obviously this has been a little bit dated and, cinema has changed a lot since then. But in this movie, no, Memories of Underdevelopment, there's a lot of craft here and I loved it. Thank you all for tuning in. I will see you next time on this podcast. I'm reviewing here. And in the meantime, get off your ass and go to the goddamn movies. Guys, I don't care if you're tired. Please just go. I can't keep telling you this. Please, I can't stop. How was that? Was that good? I'm thinking about going into acting. Okay, cool. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Oh, you made it. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of I'm Reviewing Here. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays. You can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at I'm Reviewing Here. You can also subscribe on YouTube. New episodes drop there the same day they drop on the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. Please leave a review if you'd like. Be mean, be nice, hit on me. I don't really care. Candor really, really is important to me, and, it helps the podcast too. So I really hope you enjoyed it. This podcast is brought to you especially by Nervous Chuckles. That is my fake production company because I make people nervously chuckle all the time because they never know if I'm telling a joke or not. So they're always like, do I laugh? Do I not laugh? Is he serious? Is he insane? Did he get out of the loony? What's going on? So if I made you nervously chuckle, then that means that I did my job, and thank you. There is no funding for this podcast, but if you want to give me money, then, hit me up. DM me. Bye-bye.